Have you ever wondered why some of your teachers teach the way they do? Uh, some teach one way and another is completely different. Why maybe one doesn't work out for you and one's the best teacher? Well, my name is Sean Clark, and today we're going to take a deep dive into the evolution of Western teaching philosophies, covering everything from classical teaching and modern variations. There were three main educational philosophers during the classical era. These three, of course, also ended up being some of the most famous philosophers in history. They were Plato, the father of idealism, Aristotle, the father of practical education, and Socrates, who invented the Socratic method. Socrates was the kind of guy you would ask to go get food with, and then he would ask you, why do you want to get food? Why are you hungry? Why are you wanting this from me? Kind of like that one friend who always asks why and never goes with the plans. But I digress. He was the master of questions. In fact, the Socratic method, which was named after Socrates himself, is the basis of his teaching. By responding to the students' questions with another question, Socrates hoped to guide the students to finding the answer themselves. One of his students actually ended up being Plato. Plato believed that the student should not be the only one learning, but that the teacher should be learning with the student. He was an advocate of education as a journey of the soul. He thought of education almost like a conversation, kind of how high-level chess players see chess as dialogue. One of Plato's major accomplishments was founding an institution called the Academy. It was here at the Academy that another famous philosopher met Plato, his name being Aristotle. Aristotle had a way more grounded view on how to teach. He believes that observing and doing is learning. You know those classes in school that everyone took for electives, the ones called shop classes? The ones everyone took with their friends, wanted the easy A because they got to play with heavy machinery together and they got to make cabinets or draw designs or build robot Legos. Well, you can thank Aristotle for that. His methods of hands-on learning eventually evolved into forming technology education, which is essentially shop classes. As we go into the Age of Enlightenment, we see a humongous gap between this one and the previous era. We see the Age of Enlightenment starts in the 1600s, and the previous era ended 400 years before Christ. You see the large gap in between the classical era and the Age of Enlightenment because of the domination of religion. Religion dominated everything, including education. Rather than being focused on the education of children specifically, the Catholics wanted to control and expand their reach of Europe. In this in-between period, we see the church grow with overwhelming control over the nations of Europe. Because of this, education was mostly rooted in the copying and memorization of texts. It was only the very few noble and wealthy that were educated in the ways of science, maths, language, and arts. The Enlightenment comes at a time where people began to question traditional authority like the church. The blank slate. John Locke believed all children are born with a blank mind and that the environment around them will shape that mind. Locke's revolutionary ideas of the time influenced modern ideas about democracy and children's rights. He truly believed in a child-first model of teaching. Jean-Jacques Rousseau also believed in this blank slate idea, yet he had a more free-spirited philosophy. Like how he writes in his book Emile, or on education, children should learn naturally with freedom, quite figuratively and literally too, as he preferred that students engage in outdoor education, which, as one could quite say, would be very challenging with the times of traditional education that was more focused on indoor education and a strict protocol. Like the two others in this era, Frederick Froebel had his philosophies based on childhood education, also known as the founder of kindergarten. Thanks for that, by the way, Froebel, because of you. I was the only one that didn't know how to tie my shoes in kindergarten. No, but really though, Froebel's ideas of learning through play and creativity are pivotal in the development of children. allowing for adolescents to gain valuable social skills, learn from basic motor and linguistic skills, and allowed me to get McDonald's with my mom after she picked me up from school. In the modern scene of education, we see a shift from the introduction of new philosophies to more of an advancement and variation, plus a combination of existing philosophies. Maria Montessori takes Plato's journey of the soul approach from Rousseau's more free and natural learning methods and combines them. Montessori creates what are known as Montessori schools. These schools are mixed-age classrooms with self-directing learning. The school's main idea is that a student learns at their own pace and learn with materials. John Dewey, on the other hand, is very much advanced what is known as experiential learning. This type of learning stems from Aristotle's idea of hands-on experience. Believing that children were active participants in society, he believed that they should learn the necessary skills needed by members of society. He believed just knowing that knowledge wouldn't do much at all, and that children needed to learn through experience, discussion, and reflection. Jerome Werner was a storyteller. Taking inspiration from Dewey, he prompted learning through experience, but also believed that you can learn through other people's experiences. So in turn, he taught through pictures and stories. Some other important modern-day philosophers were D. L. S. Schulman, who adopted Dewey's active teaching style and Montessori's methods of teaching to children's needs; J. Martin, who advocated for democratic classrooms, child-centered education, and gender equality in the classroom; and F. Robert Gomsch, who had a structured learning by experience method and used systematic instruction. As we look at the philosophers and philosophies that they had, we can see central common themes from different eras. We see that the learning by doing method stems from Socrates and is passed on to Aristotle. Aristotle takes this idea and adapts them. And Dewey, Montessori, and Bruner all specialize the idea to make it their own. Schulman agrees with Plato's ideas of a teacher as a guide rather than a dictator. We can see Dewey also uses balance of knowledge and skills that he learns from Aristotle. Ethics and critical thinking comes into play from Socrates, but then Plato grabs it and Aristotle adapts it, and it comes to Dewey. And fun and engagement, obviously younger learners, is learning formed by Rousseau and adopted by Froebel, Montessori, and also Brunner. The crazy thing that we find about education is that it is nowhere close to a perfect solution. In fact, there may never be one. Each philosophy has its pros, and each philosophy has its cons. And in the future, we may come up with different teaching methods, or further evolve and combine the ideas we have now. But what we know is that teaching isn't done, and its philosophies aren't. So the question I have for you is, what kind of teacher will you become to those around you?